How would your world change if you were suddenly diagnosed with a chronic illness? That's something Jillian Maierhofer hasn't just had to answer for herself, but has helped countless other women do the same. As a certified nutritional practitioner and a registered orthomolecular health practitioner, Jillian has influenced hundreds of women to take action to heal fibromyalgia. Her Holy Hell, I'm Well system helps clients find pain-free, energy-infused days and sustainable results. Even if you haven't dealt with chronic illness, her message is a powerful reminder for us to rethink how we value our time, work, and lives. Welcome to the stage, Jillian.
How does society value productivity? Think about it. How does your job, your bank account, your family outings, and everything you're expected to do determine your worth? Now imagine what that feels like for someone with a chronic illness. When you have a chronic illness, you have less time, less money. You're not as effective with your energy, and that affects the contributions to your community, your workplace, and your relationships. So when you're dealing with these kind of long-term health conditions, you are forced to change your perspective on productivity. While you might not be suffering from a chronic illness right now, stats prove that this can change in a heartbeat. 6 out of 10 adults are suffering from a chronic illness. Chronic illness is the leading factor in death and disability in the US, and it contributes to that $3.8 trillion worth of healthcare cost annually. So there is a 60% chance that at some point your life will suddenly change with a chronic illness diagnosis. It could be heart disease or diabetes, asthma, an autoimmune, or even cancer. You, a loved one, or a colleague could be affected by a chronic illness. So what happens when you don't have the energy and time to live your life like you did before? How is life going to change if you have to be looked after or if you have to care for someone else? Your productivity is going to go down as you struggle with this loss of health, opportunities, and quality of life. That's why our perspective on productivity can positively or negatively affect our self-worth. So if your self-worth is born from productivity, those dealing with a chronic illness will inevitably fall into feelings of guilt and shame. And shame is a big emotion. And as a community, we don't talk about it enough. Ironically, shame lowers productivity levels. When we hide and live in fear that someone might find out how much shame we feel even more worthless. So as someone that's gone through the trauma of a chronic illness and not living up to the expectations of my previous life, it made me feel like a failure and nearly impossible to avoid shame. I have fibromyalgia, and before my diagnosis, I was running my life like I was a superhero. My career was taking off. I was there for my kids, the play dates, the outings, the adventures. I cooked every meal from scratch. Running, workouts were a breeze. I loved my life. I would go to bed happy and wake up refreshed. Any opportunity that came up seemed easy to take on. After my diagnosis, I didn't recognize myself. I felt like I was a drain on everyone around me, and there was no career. My kids hated me because I couldn't be the woman that I was, that mom that I was before, and that was depressing. I was anxious and embarrassed to socialize because I thought I was lazy and useless. It took me years to come back to my own worth. I had to learn to see value in just getting up in the morning, knowing that I'm great just being me. Nowadays, my life is satisfying. I go to bed happy. I wake up excited again. My work is centered around supporting women with fibromyalgia to help them find perspective and value in their lives in order to thrive. And I see women go through a process once diagnosed. It looks a lot like grieving. It starts with shock and denial. It's followed by that pain and guilt. What did they do wrong? What could they have done differently? A lot of chronically ill individuals get stuck in this cycle of shock, of pain and shame. Anger, depression, isolation, bargaining, and fear are all emotions that come up. And those contribute to that low self-worth, if not managed properly. Brené Brown talks about shame and hits the nail on the head when she describes it as the fear that we're not good enough. Shame interferes with the belief that you don't deserve strong bonds with others. For people with chronic illnesses, not showing up as your prior self can injure your self-worth. So it's time to separate self-worth from productivity. It's time to stop equating getting stuff done with our innate human value. We have spent years, starting as young children and into adulthood, learning to be productive. We've been praised for doing things, been rewarded for finishing those to-do lists. And there's in those invisible hierarchies that tell us that those that graduate with honors are better than those of kids that drop out of school. But when we separate self-worth from productivity, we can see that both people are just as worthy of belonging, of love and respect, and a good life. Like self-worth is the glue that holds us all together. Self-worth is a confidence that you are worthy of belonging, of love and respect, just as you are, not for what you have or what you do. For those with a chronic illness, reconceptualizing your self-worth brings a new sense of clarity to your life. Remember, life can change fast. At the drop of a hat, you could be diagnosed with a chronic illness. So ask yourself, how do I want to be viewed when my productivity inevitably takes a hit? You're worthy of belonging, of love and respect, even if you're stuck in a hospital bed and may never work again. So let's celebrate waking up in the mornings. Let's value relationships in that listening ear. It's time to make human connections the currency of the future. Instead of believing we're worth something, only if we do everything on that never-ending to-do list. Your self-worth comes from you, and only you. If you struggle to see your value beyond your achievements, let's start by listening to that voice in your head. Pay attention to those negative words that tell you it's too hard. Don't believe the voice that says, you're not good enough. Because we all have those thoughts, and they beat us up inside. Change the conversation. Acknowledge the small victories. Take time to breathe deeply. Meditation, mindfulness can put a situation into perspective and give you the confidence you need to handle it. So do what's right for your body. Listen to it. If you need to rest, then rest and celebrate your intuitiveness. Build your self-worth 1% each day by celebrating those 1% wins. Let's remove the stigma of chronic illness by rejecting the idea that productivity is tied to self-worth. If you know someone who is struggling with a chronic illness, which I promise you do, don't ignore what they're experiencing. Know that they are doing the best they can. Understand that they don't want you to fix them, but desperately want to be understood, loved, and respected. Make them feel safe by making room for the many emotions they're going to be feeling. And as you make this space for compassion, you don't just help them on their journey. You give yourself permission to lean into life. You become part of the change that reminds us that we're not worthy because of the things we do or have, but because of who we are.